Hello, 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 my beautiful people. We are going to continue with Julius Caesar, Act 1, Scene 2. And this is one of the best scenes that we are ever going to see, one of the most important scenes that we're ever going to see because we start to find out a little bit more about Cassius's deep down motivation on why he wants to see these horrible things happen to Julius Caesar. And this and that, and a little bit of fun in between, as Shakespeare always throws at us, okay? But we did just finish off by reading about how Cassius and Brutus are talking, and Brutus starts talking about how, people think that, you're a respectable dude too. People think that you're actually just as respected, if not respected more, than Julius Caesar. And doth when people say Julius Caesar's name, they should be saying Brutus's name too. So he's trying to get into Brutus's head and manipulate him and say, "Hey, you're a powerful dude. You got a lot of respect. Everyone thinks it. Caesar's getting a little too power hungry. Maybe we should kill him so the people can get what they want: a republic and not or a democracy and not really a hierarchy or like a king, a monarch. We'll call it." We find out that Brutus, really important things. He says, set honor in one eye and death in the other, and I will look on both indifferently. So, if this is the honorable thing to do, even if I don't necessarily agree with it, if this is what the people want, then I will kill Caesar with you. But he says, but not right now. Let's just kind of see where this thing plays out. And we find out a lot about Brutus, and we find out that he really is honorable after all. And that's where we're picking up here in Act 1, Scene 2, Part 2, or Part B, as we'll call it. All right. So this conversation is going to keep continuing. It's going to keep continuing after we find this about Brutus. And Cassius says, complimentary towards Brutus, I know that virtue to be in you, Brutus, as well as I do know your outward favor. Well, honor is the subject of my story. And there's a shift in his tone. We're going to talk about tone in a few weeks. And angers enter his voice. Now he's sudden angry. And he says, but I was born as free as Caesar, so were you. And this man, Julius Caesar, and remember, this is the first time we hear the characters refer to him as a man and not really a god or a king or a powerful being. And this man, Julius Caesar, is now become a god. And Cassius is a wretched creature and must bend his body if Caesar carelessly but not on him. He's saying Caesar's the same as you and me. He's a regular dude. But now because someone says he's godlike, we have to bend our backs and walk on rocks for him and walk on glass because he snaps his fingers. Why should we have to do all this stuff for him? And now you're introducing that Cassius kind of now believes he's the same as you and me. Maybe that's the motivation behind Cassius. Maybe he's thinking he is just another dude like you and I. Why are we praising him? Why is he treated like a god? And then you hear shout and you hear flourish and trumpets blast is heard. And that's important. Not yet, but that is important soon. But remember, there is a shouting scene. Brutus kind of gets alarmed. He says, another general shout. I do believe that these applauses are for some new honors that are heaped on Caesar. So he's saying, I think Caesar took the crown. I think he took the crown and people are cheering. Cassius bitterly says, why, man? He doth bestride the narrow world like a colossus, and we petty men walk under his huge legs and peep out to find ourselves dishonorable graves. So he's saying we get on our hands and knees and we go between his legs. This is actually a allusion, which is relating to Colossus of Rhodes. And basically, it was like this giant Statue of Liberty that people would pass through and just see, like, oh my God, this is like a powerful being. This is a powerful God. He's saying Caesar's this guy right here. We're all going underneath Caesar and looking at him like, oh my gosh, he is crazy, right? And Cassius is going to continue. And notice it says bitterly. And this is in red because it has to do with our themes and it's super important. And it says, Men are men at some time are masters of their fate. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars. Men are at some times masters of their fates. This again plays on that free will versus fate theme. And he's saying, the fate isn't in our stars. It's not up. It's not like destined for us. We can create our own being. If we don't want Caesar to be king, we don't. He doesn't have to be. He says, but in ourselves and our underlings. So he believes truly, Cassius believes truly in free will and that we can take control of our own hands. Brutus and Caesar, what should be in that Caesar? Why should that name be sounded more than yours? Write them together. Yours is just as fair a name. Write Caesar and Brutus together. He's not better than you. Sound them. and doth become the mouth as well, now in the names of all the gods at once, upon what meant doth in our Caesar's feed. What he is grown, that he is grown so great. Age, thou art shamed. Rome, thou hast lost the breed of noble bloods. When could they say till now that talked of Rome, that her wide walls encompass but one man? Now is it Rome indeed and room enough, when there is in but only one man? So pretty much they're saying Rome should be ruled by the people, not just one dude. All the people in her walls should be having say in how she is ruled. And then he goes on and continues to say, "Oh, you and I have heard our father say there was a Brutus once that would have broked the eternal devil to keep his state in Rome, to keep his state, to keep his government, to keep the republic, right? To keep, the ruling of the people and not necessarily the ruling of just one monarch, or in this case, Julius Caesar." So what Cash is saying to Brutus, he's saying, "Yo, back in the day, Brutus, before you were in this funk, you wouldn't have stood for this. You would have never did this. You would have killed Caesar and said, I want to protect the good of Rome. That was you back in the day. What happened to you, bro? What's wrong with you?" And Brutus is kind of thankfully and thoughtfully thinking, just what you have said, I will consider. What you have to say, I will with patience hear, and find a time both meet to hear and answer such high things. So Brutus is saying, all right, now you kind of caught my attention. You hit deep there, and I kind of believe you. Maybe I would have done something different. So I'll think about what you told me, and if you want to talk some more, I'll listen. And in a certain time, we might find ourselves doing something that we're conjuring up in our heads right now. Cassius says with false humility, "I am glad that my weak words have struck but thus much show of fire from Brutus." And Brutus says, "The games are done and Caesar is returning." Cassius conspiratorially, like conspicuously, as they pass by, pluck Casca by the sleeve, and he will, after his sour fashion, tell you what hath proceeded worthy note today. So he just says, when Cassius, since we missed all that, since you heard the yelling in the background, we didn't see it. We were talking in our privately right here. Once we were talking privately, we didn't hear. We don't know what went on. So pluck Cascus or Casca, and he'll give us the info. He'll give us the inside scoop. And Brutus whispering conspiratorially to Cassius, "Look, Cassius, the angry spot doth glow on Caesar's brow, and that all the rest look like chidden rain. Calpurnius' cheek is pale, and Circo looks like such a ferret, and such fiery eyes, and we have seen him in the Capitol being crossed in conference by some senator." So they all look like something crazy just happened, right? Calpurnius' cheek is pale, like she's not feeling good. Caesar looks a little angry on his brow. He looks a little indifferent. And Cassius goes up to him and goes, "Cascus will tell us what happened, right? Cascus will tell us. Ask him because he's going to tell us what happened." So these other characters come walking back on stage. So now it's not just Cassius and Brutus anymore. Now we're looking at Caesar and Antony and Calpurnia and all them. They all come on stage. And then you hear Caesar walking and commanding, "Antonius!" And Antony, as he always does, says, "Yes, Caesar. Yes, master." And Caesar says pompously, it kind of means like arrogantly. And this is an important quote in Julius Caesar. And we're going to see it. He says, "Let me have men about me that are so fat, sleek-headed men, and such as sleep o' night. Yon Cassius has a lean and hungry look. He thinks too much. Such men are dangerous." This is important because it tells you the inside feelings of Caesar. He's saying, "Give me men that are fat, and give me men that sleep a lot, and that they just look hungry, and all they do is eat and sleep and don't think." Because people who think are dangerous. Why is Caesar saying that? Maybe because Caesar's being portrayed as a god, and he doesn't want people to think that he's not. The less people think, the more easier it is for him to rule. Think about that. The less people think, the more easier it is for him to rule. But he says, "Jan Cassius has a lean and hungry look. He thinks too much. Thus, such men are dangerous." So he's already kind of on to Cassius. And what does this quote mean? It pretty much means Caesar's noticed Cassius is devising a plan and tells Antony that he does not want or like people like that. And he suggests that Caesar's skeptical of Cassius because he's nervous and that Cassius will figure out that Caesar might just be an ordinary man. And his feeling is right. Right? His feeling is right. Because look up here, we have proof that Cassius is saying, His name, Caesar's no better than you, Brutus. Caesar's no better than us, but yet we treat him as a god. So maybe Caesar is catching on, and maybe Caesar's thinking, wow, he's on to me. Maybe I gotta like figure some stuff out. You know, so I gotta figure some stuff out. Okay. So Antony is innocently says, fear him not, Caesar. He's not dangerous. Cassius is a noble Roman and he's well given. He's a good guy. Don't worry about him. He wants what's best for Rome. And maybe that's what Caesar knows is the worst part, is that he knows Cassius might want the best for Rome. We will see. Caesar arrogantly says, Would he would he were fatter. But I fear him not. I fear him not. I don't fear Cassius. Yet if my name were liable to fear, I do know the man I should avoid. So as soon as that spare Cassius, he reads much. So what Caesar's saying, he goes, yeah, if my name were liable to fear, I don't fear anyone. I'm Caesar. It's impossible for me to fear. I'm a god. I can't fear anything. I'm above everything. No one. I'm not scared of nothing. But if I could feel the emotion of being scared, or if I could be a little weary of something, he'd be the guy I'd be weary of. Cassius is the guy I'd keep my eye on. And he says he reads much. He's a great observer, and he looks quite through the deeds of men. He loves no plays, as thou dost, Antony. He hears no music. Seldom he smiles, and smiles in such a sort as if he mocked himself and scorned his spirit that could be moved to smile at anything. Such men as he be never at heart's ease, whilst they behold a greater than themselves, and therefore they are very dangerous. I'd rather tell thee what is so to be feared than what I fear, for always I am Caesar. So he's saying, I fear no one. It's impossible for a god to fear man. Why would I fear man? I'm like a god. But if I could have, the feeling of being scared, Cassius is the guy I'd be scared of. Furthermore, Caesar then says, come on my right hand, for this ear is deaf, and tell me truly what you think of him. So he's saying, come walk with me closely, but make sure you get on my good side. Come on my right side, because my left ear is deaf. Now, what does that show us? That's important. It might not seem big that Caesar has a left ear that's deaf, but what it does show us is that if he is a god, why would he be deaf in his left ear? It's almost to say this is bringing a little bit more of a human aspect to him. Like maybe he's not an all powerful God. He does have some stuff wrong with him. He is deaf in his left ear. He does not have children. Maybe he's infertile. And there's some couple stories that in the full version that Cassius goes into, but we're not going to really talk about them today. Casket inquirely says, "You pulled me by my cloak. Why do you wish to speak with me?" And Caesar's gone now. Caesar walked off with his boy and with Antony, and now it's just Casca, Brutus, and Cassius again. Okay. Cassius says, "You pulled my cloak. Why do you want to speak with me?" And Brutus says, "Aye, Casca, tell us what hath chanced today. That Caesar looks so sad. What happened today? What was going on? Why did we hear all those screams? Why does Caesar and Calpurnia look pale?" And Casca says eagerly to share the gossip means he wants to help out. He's like, "Ooh, yo, this ish was good, man. This was a good story. Let me tell you. Wait till you hear this." And he says, "Why, there was a crown offered to him, and being offered him, he put it with the back of his hand thus, and then people fell a shouting." That's the first scream we talked about. Brutus, interested and eager for information, what was the second noise for? Why, that too. They shouted thrice. What was the last cry for? Why, for that too. So what he's saying is, well, we heard the crowd erupt. Why'd they erupt? And he says, well, it's because he turned down the crown once. He goes, well, we heard them erupt twice. Why'd they erupt twice? Because he turned down the crown a second time. And then he says, well, we heard it three times. What was the third one for? And he goes, because the crown was offered three times. And he said, no. Caesar said, I don't want the crown. And he says, "Aye, as merry was it, and he putting it by thrice, every time gentler than the other, and every putting by mine honest neighbors shouted." So every time he said, "No, I don't want the crown," it made the crowd want him even more. Made him want him even more. So he was offered the crown, and Caesar said, "No, I have too much humility. I don't want it." And he saw the crowd erupted, and he goes, "Oh, this is good. This is good." And he goes, "Oh, but it's hard for me to turn down this crown. It's so hard." And it like builds up in him. It's hard for him to turn down the crown, but he sees the crowd loves it. And then Antony goes again, "Here, take this crown. This is yours." And he goes, "No, I don't want it," for the second time, and the crowd erupts. And then the third time Mark Antony offered him the crown, Caesar said, "No, I am not taking it." Doesn't it, and it's interesting to see How have you guys ever wanted something so much and had to turn it away and you're like, "Oh man, I really wish I could have that right now." It builds up like a weird feeling. It builds up this like interesting, cool feeling in you, right? That's what Caesar's feeling right now. He's saying, "I want that crown, but by gosh darn it, if I'm smart, I won't take it." And Casca says, I saw Mark Anthony offer him a crown, and as I told you, he put it on once. He put it all by once. But for that, all to my thinking, he would fain and had it. Literally, and it says down here, I'm just going to skip around because we're taking a little bit. And still he refused it, and the rabblement hooted and clapped their clapped hands and threw up their sweaty nightcaps. So he's saying the crowd just kept erupting every time he denied it. And at this point, it says Caesar, for he swoonded and fell down on it. So Caesar literally wanted that crown so bad, but he kept saying no that it literally gave him an episode and he fainted. On stage, he fainted. He fainted on stage in front of all these Romans because he could not keep continuing turning down the crown, which is really interesting. And why does the crowd react this way to Caesar's refusal? Well, it just shows that, they wanted the humility of their fearless leader. When in actuality, it was so dreadful for and difficult for Caesar to refuse his power that he ends up fainting. And we're going to keep on cruising because I know this video is getting kind of long. And Cassius says, Mary, before he fell down, when he perceived the common herd was glad he refused a crown, he plucked me ope his doublet and offered them to cut his throat. When he came to himself again, he said if he had done it or said anything amiss, he desired their worships to think it was his infirmity. So, guys, literally, Caesar goes up to the crowd before he faints, right before he faints, and this is important, and he presents his throat. He says, kill me now if it means the good of Rome. He says, I will give my life for Rome. Here's my throat. Slice it if it's the better for Rome. So he's trying to show how much he wants the good of Rome. He's really kind of just building up this crowd and this godlike status he has. So he says, go ahead, cut my throat. Insinuating I'll die for this city. I'll die for this area. Okay. And Brutus says, and then after that he came and thus said away. Casca says, I could tell you more. News 2. Marellus and Flavius, for pulling scarfs off Caesar's images, are put to silence. So we talked about Marellus and Flavius, right, from Act 1, Scene 1, where they were the guys talking in the streets that we were going to go, vandalize all the posters. Look, it says, Marellus and Flavius, for pulling scarfs off Caesar's images, are put to silence. What does put to silence mean? What does put to silence mean? It can mean that no one heard from them. It can mean that they're thrown in jail. Or in this case, it could even mean the ultimate sign of censorship, death. We don't really find out, but put to silence, I think we can all agree that we're probably thinking it's they got their heads cut off for messing with Caesar's posters. And then blah blah blah. Cassius and Cassia kind of have a little side conversation. And Cassius says, hey, will you have dinner with me tomorrow night? And Cassia goes, I don't know about tomorrow, but the next day. And then Cassia goes, good, I will expect you then. I will expect you to be at my house for dinner. Now, it's interesting because that seems like a really side little part of the story, and it's not really made a big deal. But let's think about it. That might set up a future scene. In this scene, we saw Cassius manipulate Brutus, right? Maybe this might be a gateway or an entry to a dinner where Cassius might try and influence Casca in a certain way. And we're going to see kind of how that plays out. As we scroll up, just to leave this thing, he says, okay, I'll go. Brutus and Casca exit, and now you just have one person on the stage. When you just have one person on the stage, and it's Cassius, the antagonist, as we know, you know that it is called a soliloquy or a monologue. And whenever one character is talking by themselves on stage, it's giving the audience some information. So the soliloquies are always important. So whenever you just have a soliloquy or something of someone by themselves, you're always going to find out important information. It could be a plan, it could be anything. In this case, Cassius' soliloquy says, well, Brutus, thou art noble, yet I see thy honorable metal may be wrought, may be bent or changed. From that it is disposed, therefore it is met that noble minds keep over with their likes, for who so firm that cannot be seduced? Caesar both bear me hard, but he loves Brutus. If I were Brutus now and he were Cassius, he would not humor me. I will this night in several hands at this window throw, as if they come from several citizens, writings all tending to the great opinion that Rome holds of his name, wherein obscurely Caesar's ambition shall be glanced at. And after this let Caesar seat him for sure, for we will shake him, or worse days indoors. And all the soliloquy is saying, it's saying a couple different things. Number one, and this is going to be quiz question, absolutely positively a quiz question. So I'm going to write this on here. I'm going to write it on here, if it lets me. Come on, big letters. Quiz question will be on this. That's not spelled right. Let me change that for a second. Anyway, it's saying a couple different things. It's saying a few different things. Number one, he's saying Brutus is very. There's three things I want you to do. Number one, Brutus is very honorable, but I think I can change him. There's potential. I think I can mess with his mind. I think I can do this. Number two, I understand why Brutus is a little skeptical. Caesar is nice to Brutus. Caesar is good to Brutus. So why would Brutus want to be bad to him? So I understand it. Since Caesar is nice to Brutus, I can understand if I'm Cassius, I can understand why Brutus might not be totally for this plan. It totally makes sense. But I still, like you said, that number first point, I still think I can change him. And then lastly, the third thing, what he's going to plan to do, he is going to take and write a bunch of fake letters from very noble people in the entire city of Rome. He's going to write giant letters and put them in Brutus's window at nighttime when he doesn't know. And Brutus is not going to know that these letters are written from Cassius. He's going to think that these letters are written from all the noble people in Rome, saying how much they respect him and saying how noble he is. This way, Brutus thinks that it's not only Cassius who wants him to be in power, it's also a bunch of other people. Because we know Brutus does what's good for the best of Rome. He does what's good for mankind in his city. Okay? So if everyone's giving him these letters to say, "Hey, you're noble," then he's more likely to be like, "All right, like I'm doing what's best for mankind. Everyone's telling me they want Caesar out, then I will do that." Okay? But in actuality, people aren't doing that. People are not writing him letters. It's going to be Cassius writing fake letters. So Brutus thinks that is what's best for Rome. Okay. And that's Act 1, Scene 2. I know it was long. I apologize, guys. But you guys can watch these over and over again, and you have all my annotations. Again, here, vocabulary and context. I have some dictionary words that I pulled out, how Shakespeare used them. And if there's any questions you need to get from this is, when Caesar returns from the race, what characters seems to disturb him? And we know it's Cassius, so Caesar's almost on to Cassius because he thinks too much. And what dramatic action had Caesar taken in front of the people before his fainting spell? Well, two things. He presented his throat to slice to say that he would die for Rome. And two, he refused the crown three times. He refused the crown. He also refused the crown three times. All right, awesome. If this was any at all difficult. I think I explained it. I know it's long, but I hope you guys are entertained and interested. You guys can always go back and read from the very beginning whenever you guys want. All my notes are saved. All right. Much love. I'm sorry this took so long, but it's good. It's for your benefit, and we'll move on